Your mother has some rather foolish aspirations that seem quite absurd. You all will find yourselves in the same situation. Cooking akara at the village market. That's what girls excel at. Women are destined for 3 purposes: the kitchen, the bedroom, and the labor room. All that remains is triviality. A life devoid of purpose. Henna remained motionless, her heart shattering with every utterance. Daku burst out of the midwife's hut, his expression contorted with rage and his footsteps laden with exasperation. From within the hut, Shoma's gentle sobs resonated, yet he continued unabated. Nonsense. Utter nonsense, he bellowed, his voice quaking with fury as he strode purposefully towards home. His wife had just welcomed their 5th daughter into the world. Yet another girl. There is no son to uphold his name. No heir to continue his legacy. My mother cautioned me. She cautioned me in Daku's demise. Her words cutting and resentful. That woman is ineffective, lacking any value. He tightened his fists, flailing his arms dramatically as if attempting to cast off his rage. All she knows is to spread herself and release these unworthy girls. Pointless. His voice trembled with shame as he envisioned the derisive murmurs of the townsfolk. Is it too much to ask for just one boy from her? As he marched through the village, a few onlookers glanced his way. Their eyes grew wide as they exchanged hushed whispers, pondering the mystery of what had befallen him. Yet Danny remained indifferent. He found himself engulfed in a tempest of fury and humiliation. In the quiet of the midwife's hut, Chima sat, enveloped in stillness as she cradled her newborn daughter. Her heart felt as though it was shattering into fragments. She had assured Danny that this time she would bear him a son after their 4th daughter. And now she felt the weight of disappointment once more. She gazed at the tiny baby, tears cascading down her cheeks. She understood it wasn't her fault. She engaged in daily prayers throughout her pregnancy, observed fasting, and performed every ritual recommended to her. The look of disappointment in Danny's eyes struck her heart with the sharpness of a blade. She felt an overwhelming urge to shout, to convey that it wasn't her responsibility, that she wasn't the divine being who bestowed children upon the world. Yet, what words could she possibly find? What options were available to her? The tears streamed down, pouring forth as her anxieties intensified. She could already envision the fury that would greet her upon her return home. How would she manage to get through it? Mama B, the midwife, settled softly beside her. She rested a hand on Chima's shoulder, her voice gentle and imbued with warmth. Chima, it's time to pull yourself together. It is essential to cultivate strength, both for your own well-being and for the sake of your children. Yet your little one, she radiates beauty, truly a blessing from above. Children are a gift bestowed upon us by a higher power, not something we create ourselves. Don't allow anyone to diminish your worth after everything you've endured to bring this baby into the world. Yet Chima was unable to cease his tears. The words offered comfort, yet they failed to quell the fear. The idea of going back to Danny's origins sent a chill down her spine. Her tears streamed down, saturating her baby's blankets. She longed to embrace the joy of the life she had created. Yet all that enveloped her was despair. From the instant she returned home, she sensed that her life was poised for a significant change. Danny was determined to fulfill his vow, ensuring her life was filled with misery at every turn. A few days later, Chima came back home, her newborn held closely in her embrace. Every step was a burden, as if the entire universe pressed down upon her shoulders. 3 long days had passed since she gave birth, and not once had Danny come to see her or their child. He had left her at the midwife's hut, forcing her to navigate the challenges of motherhood alone. She decided to make her way home under the cover of night, aiming to evade the inquisitive gazes of her neighbors and the watchful looks of her older children, whom she presumed would be fast asleep by then. Yet her heart raced with fear, aware that Danny's fury lingered just ahead. As Chima entered the hut she shared with her husband, her movements were abruptly interrupted by a harsh, angry voice slicing through the stillness. "Where do you believe you are headed?" Her breath hitched in her throat. She glanced upward and found Danny perched on their wooden bed, his expression twisted in a mix of revulsion and fury. His intense gaze immobilized her. "I'm home, Danny," she stammered, her voice a mere breath. "You must be incredibly foolish," Danny bellowed, rising suddenly and striding towards her. His neck strained with rage, veins protruding as he waved his arms in agitation. "Chima, you made a promise to me about having a son. You promised it would be a boy this time. And now here we are, with another girl who seems to hold no value." Chima's knees trembled, and tears cascaded down her cheeks. She fought to articulate her thoughts as her throat constricted. "Danny, I took care of everything. I devoted myself to prayer around the clock, embraced fasting, and diligently carried out the rituals prescribed to me. I assure you, Danny, I bear no responsibility for this situation. Only the divine can determine a child's gender. I sincerely apologize. Please forgive me." Danny let out a derisive sound, his lips curling back against his neck. "Apologies for your unproductive nature. Observe my friends, Chima, they have sons, robust and lively boys to fulfill their needs. What about me? You've left me with a home filled with daughters who seem to serve no purpose. All because of your actions. Am I not enough of a man? Am I doomed to endure this humiliation because of you?" His voice trembled with resentment. "You've turned me into a figure of ridicule in this village. I find it difficult to speak confidently in front of my friends. I ought to have heeded my mother's warning about you." Chima fell to her knees, holding her baby tightly in her arms. "Let's work together, Danny, to discover a solution. Let's discuss it. Please, don't push us away," she implored, her voice trembling as tears streamed down her face. However, Danny shook his head, his demeanor icy and resolute. "Answer? There is no resolution with you. Chima, it's evident to me that there isn't a single male egg in that unfortunate womb of yours. I've reached my limit. I will no longer support these beings you refer to as children." His voice oozed disdain as he gestured towards the door. "Your belongings have been relocated to the quarters designated for farm workers. You will remain there with your daughters. I seek a genuine woman. A woman capable of bearing me a son." Chima inhaled sharply, her heart constricting as his words hit her with the force of a tangible impact. "No, Danny," she exclaimed, her voice quivering with shock. "This is unacceptable for us. We are your kin." "Kindly," Danny interrupted her, his tone unmistakably final and resolute. "I've done it already. Exit this room immediately, or I will ensure you do so myself. I refuse to allow you to disrupt my life any longer." The blaze in his gaze revealed the sincerity behind his every word. Chima understood that further pleading would be futile. He had come to a firm decision. With a quiver in her feet and a tremor in her body, she exited quietly, leaving behind a silence that spoke volumes. She held her baby close, cradling them against her heart. The night outside felt more frigid, more desolate. She collapsed onto the earth beneath a sprawling tree in the yard, her tears streaming unabated. Her cries pierced the quiet of the night as she held her baby close. Swaying softly, "I'm sorry, my child," she murmured, her voice laden with grief. "I have introduced you to a realm where we are unwelcome." Her heart ached as she reflected on her parents, longing for their presence to soothe her, to provide her with a sense of belonging. Yet, in that moment, she found herself utterly solitary. By morning, Chima resolved to pay a visit to Mwafo, her mother-in-law. She felt a deep sense of urgency, grasping at the slim chance that Mwafo could reason with her son. Deep down, she understood it was a slim chance. Mwafo had always held a dislike for her. Right from the start, she had battled fiercely to prevent Danny from marrying her. Yet Danny remained resolute, defying his mother's desires. Now, with no one else to rely on, Chima held on to the hope that, for the sake of her grandchildren, Mwafo could put aside her personal feelings and offer her support. As Chima neared Mwafo's hut, her heart raced with anticipation. She dabbed at the tears that had marked her face throughout the night, striving to regain her composure. Mwafo sat on a low stool in front of her hut, her face radiating joy as she sorted through vibrant pieces of Ankara fabric. The image of her mother-in-law chuckling quietly to herself struck Chima like a blow to her already bruised soul. How could she exude such joy when everything was crumbling around her? "Good morning, Mama," Chima said softly, her voice quivering with fatigue and sorrow. Mwafo hardly lifted his gaze. She responded with care, gesturing lightly towards Chima. Please take a moment to examine these materials. Chima, are they not stunning? I find myself in a state of confusion, unable to decide which option to select. I need assistance in making a decision. Which color do you believe we should choose? Us? Chima pondered, her brows knitting together in perplexity. What could Mwafo possibly mean by we? Mama, you said we. Chima inquired cautiously, her voice revealing her discomfort. Is there a reason for celebration? Mwafo finally raised her gaze, a self-satisfied smile spreading across her lips. Indeed, my son's eyes have finally opened, she declared with delight. In just 2 market days, he will be taking a new wife. A respectable woman, one who will bear him the son he rightfully deserves. Her gaze sharpened as it met Chima's. It appears, Chima, that your sorcery has not succeeded. Chima's knees gave way, and she collapsed to the earth, holding her baby close. Mama, please, she pleaded, her voice trembling. What should I do with my kids? How will I manage to care for them? I kindly ask for your assistance in pleading with him. Mwafo's expression soured, and she sprang up from her stool, jabbing an accusatory finger at Chima. Children, she exclaimed, her voice escalating with rage. Did I just hear you refer to those beings as children? A woman remains without children until she bears a son for her husband. Chima, just so you're aware, you do not have any children. You do not have any children. Her voice cut through the air, each word hitting Chima with the force of a whip. Mom, you understand it wasn't my doing. Mwafo interrupted her, her voice booming. I may lightning strike your mouth short. It's not your responsibility, is it? So, who is to blame? Are you implying that my son, Danny, lacks the qualities to be a father to his son? My very own son? Chima, I won't tolerate any disrespect towards my heritage. I cautioned Danny regarding you. Yet he chose to ignore my advice. Thank goodness his eyes are finally open. She struck her chest with great flair. My son will not perish without a male heir. Not as long as I draw breath. Chima knelt, tears streaming down her cheeks as she held her baby tightly. With every biting remark from her mother-in-law, her heart shattered a little more. Yet Mwafo redirected her focus to the vibrant Ankara fabric, chuckling and humming softly as she selected patterns. Her joy stood in stark opposition to Chima's suffering. Coming to terms with the absence of hope, Chima rose gradually, her legs quaking beneath the burden of her grief. She pivoted and commenced the lengthy journey back to the farmworkers' quarters. She held her baby close to her heart. Tears clouded her sight, yet she made no effort to clear them. Her life was a chaotic mess. She found herself endlessly pondering whether she would ever break free from the grip of despair. With every step, a weight pressed down on her, drawing her back to a place that had lost its sense of belonging. A few weeks later, Danny married a stunning woman named Adora, leaving Chima and her 5 children behind entirely. Chima, filled with desperation and heartbreak, had implored him time and again. She knelt before him, her eyes glistening with tears, and vowed to fulfill any request he had if only he would grant her forgiveness and welcome them back. Yet Danny's heart remained unyielding, and his resolve was firm. He ignored her pleas and directed all his focus towards his new wife, abandoning Chima to confront the world by himself. Chima felt her heart break anew every time she witnessed the affection and tenderness Danny bestowed upon Adora. Under the night sky, they gathered outside their hut, sharing laughter and conversation as if everything was just right, while Chima's children remained tucked away in their modest dwelling, weeping and struggling over the meager sustenance she was able to gather. On most nights, it simply fell short. Danny failed to send even a single grain of rice or a coin to assist them. One night, Chima remained quietly in the corner of the hut, observing her children as they wept themselves to sleep, their stomachs empty. Her heart weighed down with such intensity, it seemed on the verge of shattering. She dried her tears and resolved with determination in her heart. Never again. She would never let her children suffer from hunger. If Danny and his mother intended to label her daughters as worthless simply for being girls, she would demonstrate their value beyond doubt. She aimed to demonstrate to everyone that her daughters were destined to achieve greatness. Regardless of the challenges she faced, her determination to protect her children remained unwavering. With her determination unwavering, Chima stood tall, embracing every opportunity for work that came her way. She strolled beneath the blazing sun, tending to the weeds in people's fields for a handful of coins. She transported substantial loads of firewood from the woods to trade in the markets. She diligently cleaned and polished homes until her back throbbed with pain. No task was too insignificant or challenging if it ensured her children had meals to sustain them. Een, her eldest daughter, frequently accompanied her to lend a hand. Een carried the baby on her back as Chima walked with unwavering determination. The villagers, inspired by her resolve, started assigning her small tasks, providing whatever modest assistance they could muster. Gradually, Chima started to set aside some money. After reaching her limit, she chose to begin selling akara at the village market. Each day, she would rise before dawn, prepare her fire, and start frying akara. The enticing aroma wafted through the atmosphere, drawing a crowd eager to purchase from her. Her akara was so delightful that it captured the attention of the entire village. Patrons gathered around her stall, and her enterprise rapidly started to flourish. After a prolonged period of struggle, a glimmer of hope finally emerged for Chima and her children. Using the profits from her akara business, she successfully enrolled her children in the village school. Seeing them stroll to school with their slates and books filled Chima's heart with joy, bringing tears to his eyes. She had battled through the shadows and was at last catching a glimpse of hope. As time passed, Chima's daughters blossomed into stunning, self-assured young women. They garnered admiration not just for their appearance, but equally for their intellect and compassion. They were well-behaved kids, brought up with care by their mother. Een, the eldest, shone the brightest. She stood out as the top student in her class, cherished by both her teachers and peers. Her teachers frequently assured her of a bright future, and Een wholeheartedly believed them, having witnessed her mother's hardships and the daily sacrifices Chima made for their survival. She promised herself to bring pride to her family. Each afternoon following school, Een assisted her mother in getting ready for the upcoming market day. And late into the night, after her siblings had drifted off to sleep, she dedicated herself to her studies beneath the faint light of a lantern. She envisioned a future as a lawyer, a dream her teacher had confidently affirmed was attainable with dedication and effort. As the girls matured, the burden of supporting them increasingly pressed down on Chima, and what once flourished in her business now felt like a struggle just to stay above water. Nurturing her daughters and managing their school fees turned into a relentless struggle, one that haunted her through sleepless nights. Chima had great aspirations for her daughters. She envisioned them attending school, pursuing bright futures, and breaking free from the cycle of hardship and limitations that the village imposed. Yet, with every day that went by, those dreams appeared to drift further away. The moment of truth arrived when Een, her eldest daughter, required funds to enroll in her senior WIAC exams. Chima found himself devoid of any savings, with no means to settle his debts. Tears flowed quietly down her cheeks as she sat outside their modest hut beneath the moonlight, grappling with her sense of helplessness. Within the confines of her space, Een stirred from slumber, eager to immerse herself in the pages of her books. Feeling the void left by her mother's absence, she ignited her small kerosene lamp and ventured outside. There, beneath the grand tree close to their hut, she discovered Chima sitting silently, her face marked by tears. "Mother," Een called gently, approaching her. "What brings you out here?" Chima hurriedly attempted to clean her face, but Een saw right through her. "You've been crying, Mama," she said, kneeling beside her. "What seems to be the issue? Do you feel unwell?" Her voice trembled, and her eyes started to brim with tears. Chima let out a heavy sigh, her voice trembling. "Een, my daughter," she began, her voice laden with grief. "It's incredible how quickly you girls are growing. And with each passing day, it becomes more challenging for me. Your Kara business is no longer sufficient. I can hardly provide for you, much less manage your school expenses. And now your WIAC examinations. I lack the funds to cover the cost. The weight is overwhelming." She collapsed, tears streaming down her face. Een embraced her mother tightly, tears flowing down her cheeks. "It's all right, Mama," she murmured, embracing her closely. Your dedication and effort for us are truly appreciated. I long to offer more assistance. There's no need to be concerned about my WIAC. I will speak with Papa. Perhaps he could offer assistance. Kindly, Mama, it's time for you to rest. We will discover a path forward. Chima nodded slowly, leaning into her daughter, as if Ian's petite figure could somehow bear her sorrow. I pray the gods touch his heart, she whispered, though deep down she questioned Danny's willingness to assist. The following evening, Ian mustered her bravery and made her way to her father's gruby, where Danny lounged with a calabash of palm wine in his grasp. The crisp evening air whispered with the rhythm of her footsteps, and Danny glanced up, his face already etched with annoyance. Good evening, Papa, Ian greeted gently, striving to maintain a calm tone. What is it? Danny snapped, regarding her with a wary gaze. What brings you here to interrupt my evening? You playful girl? Ian paused for a moment, yet pressed on with determination. Papa, I apologize for troubling you, she started, her eyes glistening with tears. However, I require your assistance. My WIAC exams are approaching, and my mother is unable to afford the fees. Father, I implore you. Danny tossed his head back and let out a hearty laugh, the sound resonating triumphantly throughout the compound. As he came to a halt, his expression turned steely with rage. Who came up with the brilliant notion to send you imbeciles to school in the first place? He retorted. But, Papa, answer me, he shouted, striking the wooden bench with his hands. Your mother has some rather foolish aspirations that seem quite absurd. Only a handful of girls will find themselves in her shoes, frying akara in the village market. That's what they excel at. Women are destined for 3 purposes: the kitchen, the bedroom, and the labor room. All else is trivial, an unfulfilled existence. Ian remained motionless, her heart shattering with every utterance. I have 2 sons to care for, Danny continued, his voice laced with contempt. I will not expend my resources on women. Your efforts seem futile, and this educational system feels like a mere illusion. Now, please leave my presence. Seek out a partner and start making arrangements for your wedding. Your friends are engaged in that activity. Tears flowed down Ian's cheeks as she faced their heart once more. Her chest was constricted, and her legs felt unsteady. She continued to sprint until her eyes landed on her mother standing by the door. Choma hurried to her daughter, enveloping her in a warm, loving hug. Upon noticing the tears cascading down her cheeks, she questioned, Didn't he? Choma inquired, her voice trembling with anguish. Ian pressed her face into her mother's arms, her tiny frame trembling with each sob. Mama, she stuttered, her voice trembling. Why does Dad dislike us so much? What mistakes did we make? Choma gently caressed her daughter's head, her tears streaming down without restraint. Your father doesn't hate you, my dear, she murmured, even as her heart whispered a different truth. He is consumed by the conviction that female children hold no value. But to me, you all are invaluable. You are my delight, my happiness, my aspiration. Do not allow his words to shatter your spirit. Ian, all will fall into place. I assure you, despite my uncertainty on the matter. You possess an undeniable strength, my child, one that even your father cannot hinder. Ian held tightly to her mother's soothing words, yet the ache in her chest lingered stubbornly. In that moment, her tears flowed freely as she clung to the woman whose love was deeper than anything she could ever imagine. For weeks, Ian was haunted by her father's cruel words. They resonated in her thoughts, each one slicing through her like a blade. Each time she witnessed her mother's struggle, tirelessly laboring to support her and her siblings, a sharp pang of sorrow pierced her heart. With each passing day, her optimism for a brighter tomorrow faded. Her aspirations of becoming a lawyer now felt like an unattainable dream. Her father's words started to resonate as undeniable truth. Perhaps attending school was an imprudent aspiration. Perhaps it was time to embrace the truth and consider the idea of marriage. At the very least, marriage could provide a way to lighten her mother's load. One evening, an unforeseen event took place. A visitor arrived. Nkiru, Kioma's childhood friend from the city. Nkiru arrived in the village to see her parents and chose to pay a visit to Kioma. As Kioma laid eyes on her old friend, a radiant smile spread across her face. illuminating her entire being with happiness. The two women sat outside the hut, engaged in conversation and laughter, sharing updates on everything that had transpired in their lives. As the discussion deepened, Kioma revealed her challenges, her tone laden with grief. Nkiru absorbed every word, her heart shattering as her friend unveiled her suffering. Nkiru remarked with a hint of contemplation, "There's a wealthy family I know in the city. They are kind individuals. I am familiar with them from church. I heard they're searching for a house girl, and they've promised to send whoever works for them to school. I might bring Ennet along to the city. She could remain and attend school, which would alleviate some of your responsibilities. Kioma, this might be a solution for all involved." Kioma shook her head with determination. "No," she said, her voice trembling with apprehension. "I understand my financial situation, Nkiru, but I've come across numerous accounts of children facing mistreatment in their roles as helpers. Ennet is merely 17 years old. She has endured a great deal already. I cannot bring any additional suffering into her existence. She is my eldest child." Later that night, Kioma gathered her children around her and shared Nkiru's suggestion with them. As she spoke, her heart felt conflicted, yet to her astonishment, Ennet's expression brightened with resolve. "Mama, Nkiru is correct," Ennet said gently. "What if this is a divine response to our prayers? What if they are genuinely kind individuals? Refusal is not an option. Funds are tight. Mama, I wish to leave. Allow me to assist you." Kioma's eyes brimmed with tears. She grasped her daughter's hand firmly, as if releasing it would shatter her world. "Ennet, you girls mean everything to me." She wept. "I am not married. I am an only child. Only you and your sisters. I can't stand the thought of anything happening to you." Ennet knelt before her mother, her expression serene yet determined. "Mama," she said softly, "I'll be okay. Nothing will happen to me. I beg you, allow me to leave. I will put in the effort and ensure you feel a sense of pride. This is our opportunity." Kioma gazed into her daughter's eyes and recognized an undeniable strength within them, though her heart ached at the thought of saying goodbye to her firstborn. She nodded with reluctance, tears streaming down her face. A few days later, Ennet gathered her sparse belongings and departed the village alongside Aunt Nkiru. As they departed, Kioma lingered at the threshold of their hut, her hands quivering as she bid farewell, her gaze following Ennet as he faded into the distance. Her heart was a tapestry of shattered pieces and glimmers of hope. She softly uttered a plea to the divine, imploring them to safeguard her daughter, while hoping that this act of courage would blossom into something truly magnificent. The family of the late Mr. Ma Daku resided in a grand mansion that appeared to ascend towards the sky, encircled by towering gates and an expansive garden. Ennet had never encountered a structure of such grandeur before. She stood at the entrance, her feet frozen, her mouth slightly open in awe. The walls shimmered, the windows shone, and everything appeared magnificent, reminiscent of the houses she had only encountered in the stories she had read back in the village. Upon entering, they were met with a warm welcome from Mrs. Margaret, the gracious hostess of the home. She welcomed them with a smile, guiding them into an expansive sitting room adorned with gleaming furniture and exquisite decorations. While Aunt Nkiru and Mrs. Margaret engaged in conversation, Ennet observed her surroundings in silence. The residence was truly magnificent, resembling a grand palace. Every corner appeared to murmur of abundance and ease. Mrs. Margaret shared that they had 3 children, a son pursuing law at the university and 2 daughters who resided at home. Upon hearing that the boy was pursuing a law degree, Ennet felt a flutter in her chest. She reflected on her aspirations of pursuing a career in law. Could this indicate something? After some time, Mrs. Margaret requested Ennet to step aside, seeking a moment alone with Aunt Nkiru. Ennet stood outside, her heart racing with anticipation. She perched on a quaint bench beneath the leafy canopy of a tree in the garden. Envisioning her fresh start in the city, she envisioned returning to school, clad in a crisp uniform. Her dreams seemed within reach, tantalizingly close enough to grasp. When Aunt Nkiru finally emerged, she radiated joy. "Your benefactor has assured you of support throughout your university journey, provided you conduct yourself appropriately," she remarked, giving Ennet a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Keep your mother in your thoughts. Ennet, do not let her down." Ennet nodded enthusiastically, her heart brimming with anticipation. Ennet dedicated herself to her tasks from the moment she stepped into the Mataku's household. She diligently scrubbed the floors, swept the expansive compound, prepared meals, and meticulously cleaned every corner of the mansion. The task was draining, yet she remained unfazed. Every task seemed like a tiny stride towards her aspiration of attending school. Yet, as weeks stretched into months, silence enveloped the topic of her education. Her enthusiasm slowly diminished, giving way to a sense of sorrow. The most frustrating aspect was that she was unable to contact Antinkiru to explain the situation. Her heart plummeted as the reality dawned on her. She was brought to the city with the sole purpose of being a house girl, and nothing beyond that. Every morning, she observed Mrs. Margaret's daughters depart for school, clad in their tidy uniforms, their faces radiating joy. Each afternoon, once her chores were completed, Ennet would take her place by the gate, tears streaming down her face. As she observed other children making their way home from school, the vision shattered her heart. Why were they able to experience the life she longed for, while she endured constant hardship? One evening, after her madam and her girls had finished dinner, Ennet resolved that she could no longer remain silent. She removed the plate and faced Mrs. Margaret, her hands shaking. "What is it exactly?" Mrs. Margaret inquired with a piercing gaze, her eyes narrowing. "Please, Ma," Ennet began, her voice trembling. "It pertains to my education. You assured me that you would send me to school. I've been here for months, putting in the effort, yet it seems no one is acknowledging it. I truly wish to attend school. My mother is enduring hardship in the village, and I feel a strong desire to assist her." Mrs. Margaret's expression contorted in fury. With a tone of disdain, she exclaimed, "I provide you with shelter. I feed you, and still you dare to dream of school? What is it that you aim to demonstrate? Do you believe you possess more talent than you truly do? You hail from the depths, Ennet, and that is your rightful place. Individuals such as yourself are destined to support others, rather than to aspire for an improved existence." Ennet's eyes grew large, and tears cascaded down her face. "But this wasn't the agreement," she stated, her voice quivering yet resolute. "Indeed, you provide me with shelter and sustenance. Yet I put in considerable effort to earn it. All I seek is the opportunity to attend school. That's the sole compensation I seek." Mrs. Margaret rose suddenly and struck Ennet's heart with a forceful blow. The sound reverberated throughout the space. "How could you possibly address me in such a manner? You scoundrel! Are you aware of the amount I compensated your Aunt Zinkari for bringing you here? I compensated her generously to provide for your unfortunate mother. You arrived here lean and famished, and I nourished you abundantly. So, you believe you can respond to me like that? I will bring such despair to your life that even your own mother will struggle to see who you are." That night, Mrs. Margaret summoned a group of men to brutally assault Ennet. She was confined in a shadowy, musty chamber for 3 long days. Deprived of sustenance, Ennet sprawled on the unforgiving floor, her body racked with pain as tears streamed down her cheeks without pause. This was far from the life she had envisioned. Memories of her mother, her sisters, and the little hut they had once called home flooded her mind. She longed to return to the past. She regretted not heeding her mother's advice. Yet her desire for a better life had driven her choices. From that moment forward, Ennet's anguish deepened, regardless of her relentless efforts. It seemed that nothing could ever satisfy Mrs. Margaret or her pampered daughters. She faced accusations for actions she never committed, endured hurtful names, and was incessantly reminded that she would never achieve anything of significance. Ennet seldom found rest, frequently wandering through the darkness while others slumbered. Her constant companion was a stream of tears. She bore the burden of her shattered dreams, feeling the deep pain of being ensnared in a life unworthy of her spirit. On a bright and cheerful afternoon, Mother Margaret returned home with an unusually joyful demeanor. "Today, I'm preparing dinner," she declared with a beaming smile. "My son is returning home. Ennet, prepare his room at once, ensuring it is filled correctly, without any stains or errors." Her voice resonated with enthusiasm and command as she distributed the instructions. Ennet's interest was ignited. She had yet to encounter Margaret's son and was curious about what he might be like. She pondered whether he would mirror the rudeness and meanness of his sisters. A frown settling on her face. It's likely even more troubling, as he's the sole son in the family, which means he's probably just as pampered as his mother and sisters. As she approached his room, a sigh escaped her lips, burdened by her thoughts. As she swung the door wide, time seemed to stand still, and she was enveloped in wonder. The room was expansive and exquisitely adorned, surpassing the elegance of any other area in the house. Her gaze drifted until it settled on a bookshelf nestled in the corner. The space resembled a quaint library, brimming with vibrant and captivating volumes. Ennet's jaw fell open, and in a moment of impulse, she hurried over. Her fingers glided along the spines of the books, and her enthusiasm overflowed. She retrieved a book and settled onto the floor, browsing through its pages. Ennet found herself utterly immersed in the realm of narratives, losing sight of the reason she had entered the room initially. Time slipped away, stretching from minutes to an hour, and she remained blissfully unaware until a sudden cough pulled her back to the present moment. She glanced upward, taken aback. There he stood, framed in the doorway, a tall and strikingly handsome young man. His composed demeanor and inscrutable expression left Ennet feeling perplexed and anxious. Did he feel anger? Did he find it entertaining? She was uncertain. Her heart raced within her chest, and despite her best efforts, she found herself unable to look away from him. She had never encountered such striking beauty before. They remained in an uncomfortable stillness, their gazes intertwined until Madame Margaret burst into the room. The view before her took her breath away. The room remained cloaked in dust, untouched and uncleaned. Ennet felt a heavy weight in his chest as Madame Margaret's expression contorted with rage. "What on earth?" Margaret let out a piercing scream. "What has this foolish girl been up to all this time?" She strode towards Ennet, her voice laced with fury. I, Ennet stammered, grappling with her thoughts as the words eluded her grasp. Margaret's gaze sharpened as she caught sight of the book in Ennet's hand. "Isn't that the book written by my son?" She let out a sharp hiss. "How could you possibly lay a finger on it with those unclean hands?" Before Ennet could reply, Margaret seized the book and struck her across the face. The impact caused Ennet to stumble. "Foolish girl," Margaret hissed. "I provided you with a straightforward task. Tidy up this room. Yet here you are, acting as if you're engrossed in a book. What do you really understand about things that are pointless and foolish?" Ennet's cheeks flushed with a mix of agony and humiliation, tears cascading down her face. Margaret faced her son. "Alex, my dear, please join me in the living room. Allow the foolish girl to clean up this chaos. You have 10 minutes. Ennet," she commanded. To Ennet's surprise, Alex chose not to follow his mother. He kept his voice steady as he said, "No, mother, you can't go. I wish to demonstrate to her the way I envision my room being maintained." After Margaret departed, Alex shifted his attention to Ennet. He noticed the tears shimmering on her cheeks and was struck by a wave of guilt. "I'm sorry," he murmured gently. "That was uncalled for. I'm Alex, and that's perfectly fine if you prefer to keep your name to yourself for now." Ennet glanced up at him, taken aback by the warmth in his voice. She dabbed at her eyes, trying to stifle her sobs. "My name is Ennet," she said softly. "It was a pleasure to meet you." "Ennet," Alex said with a warm smile. "Are you fond of reading?" Ennet nodded, a mix of caution and gratitude evident in his expression. Alex extended a hand towards the book that Margaret had borrowed, returning it to her with a gentle gesture. "You can keep this one," he said, "and feel free to read any other book from my shelf. I truly have no objections." Ennet's lips curled into a subtle smile, the first authentic smile she had worn in ages. "Thank you," she murmured gently. From that moment, a bond started to flourish between Ennet and Alex. After what seemed like an eternity, Ennet experienced a flicker of hope. Each evening, Ennet and Alex would quietly slip out of the house, seeking solace by the pool in the tranquil garden. Under the soft illumination of the moon, they would immerse themselves in books, trading thoughts, engaging in spirited debates, and sharing laughter that gently resonated over the tranquil water. For Ennet, these moments felt like a dream realized. a fleeting reprieve from her unforgiving reality. And for Alex, they were truly enlightening. He was perplexed by the fact that a girl as bright and intelligent as Enid was not attending school. One evening, following a particularly spirited conversation, Alex faced her, his curiosity finally overflowing. "Enid," he inquired softly, "what brings you here? Why are you working so hard in my house instead of attending school?" Enid paused, her gaze falling to the earth beneath her. After a brief pause, she began to speak, her voice heavy with sorrow. "My father turned away from us because we were girls. He claimed we were of no value. My mother did everything she could, but she simply didn't have the means to keep providing for us and sending us to school. Aunt Nkiru brought me here with the promise of school. Yet this is my reality now." A word hit Alex with the force of a punch to the heart. The sadness in his eyes was impossible to conceal. "That is incorrect," he stated with conviction, his voice trembling with feeling. "This situation is unjust. Enid, I shall have a conversation with my mother. It would be more beneficial for you to be in school, rather than spending your time here aimlessly." During the following evening, Alex brought up the matter at dinner. "Mother," he began, selecting his words with great care, "what is the reason behind Enid working for us? Enid is exceptional. She should be in school, not toiling as a maid." Margaret's fork clattered onto her plate, her expression contorted with fury as she shot a fierce glare at Alex. "I can't believe you would stoop so low to engage in conversation with that girl at a table as blessed as this," she snapped. "She is merely a servant. And while that may not be an issue, it could also serve as a remedy," Alex contended, his tone escalating. "That girl possesses an incredible amount of potential. Have you ever taken the time to truly listen to her? She possesses great intelligence. She puts in a lot of effort. How can we allow her to wither away in this place? Mother, this is unfairness." Margaret's gaze sharpened. "Pay attention, Alex," she stated with an icy demeanor. "This will remain unspoken from now on. Are you listening to me?" "No, Mother," Alex declared, rising from his chair, his voice quivering with fury. "We shall discuss it. How can you prioritize your own children's future while devaluing someone else's life? Where does your passion lie? Do you actually possess one?" Margaret's jaw fell open in disbelief, her eyes aflame with intensity. "This is not an appropriate way to address your mother. I will speak the truth." "Mother," Alex replied sharply. Margaret's lips twisted into a sardonic grin. "She seeks the truth. Alex. All right, I compensated her aunt with 5 million naira to ensure Ian would serve here as her maid for the next 20 years. She should have been aware of the entire arrangement. It's not on me that she wasn't." Alex gazed at his mother, a look of shock frozen on his features. 2 decades. Mother, your incredibility knows no bounds." He possessed a wealth of thoughts, yet the right words eluded him. Just as he was about to turn away from the table, Margaret's piercing voice halted him in his tracks. "Alex," she said, narrowing her eyes, "are you fond of that maid?" Alex stood still, his heart racing. He understood that his mother would not want to hear his response. Yet he could no longer suppress the truth within himself. He found himself captivated by Ian. She possessed beauty, kindness, and a heart brimming with dreams. Even in the face of the pain she had faced, she expressed her desire to become a lawyer. And Alex resolved to take action. He was determined to do anything necessary to liberate her from this existence and support her in realizing her aspirations. In silence, Alex pivoted and strode off, leaving his mother behind. Margaret found her thoughts tangled and unclear. She moved restlessly around her room, her mind swirling with chaotic thoughts. "That girl Ian," she muttered under her breath, her voice low yet cutting with fury. "She aims to ruin my sanctuary. My very own son Alex. Becoming enamored with a servant. An unnoticed soul." The expression on Alex's face when he mentioned Ian was clear and undeniable. He was deeply enamored with her. Yet Margaret found herself perplexed by the reasons behind it. Who does he really see in her? That filthy girl from the alleys. She spat. That evening, Margaret's doubts were validated. As she glanced through the curtains, she noticed Alex and Ian nestled together in the garden, sharing laughter and engrossed in their reading beneath the gentle illumination of the garden lights. Her chest constricted with rage. How could this have occurred right in front of me? She pondered, her nails pressing into her palm. My son is a housekeeper? This would bring such disappointment to my family. She found it unbearable. This must come to a close tonight. At the stroke of midnight, Margaret burst into Ian's cramped room, wielding a bucket of icy water. In silence, she flung it over Ian, soaking her in a heartbeat. Ian sprang awake, trembling and disoriented. She rose unsteadily, her pale eyes meeting Margaret's intense stare. You ungrateful little rat, Margaret spat, her voice trembling with fury as she struck a blow across her cheeks. Do you really believe you can slip into my home and ruin all that I've created? You're not quite ready for that yet. Do you understand what I'm saying? Insufficiently sized. It is time for you to gather your belongings and depart from my home immediately. Ian's heart raced as she struggled to comprehend the unfolding events. Ma, please, she implored, her voice quivering. What mistakes have I made? I promise I haven't done anything at all. I kindly ask that you do not discard me. I find myself without a destination. Margaret's lips twisted into a sardonic grin. She remarked that it would have been wise to consider that prior to flirting with her son. Your destination and what unfolds in your life are of no concern to me. If I catch you anywhere close to this house again, I will end you. Are you following me? Ian gazed at Margaret, tears cascading down her cheeks. She perceived the fury in Margaret's gaze and understood this was no hollow warning. Margaret truly meant every word. With quivering hands, Ian carefully gathered her few possessions into a small bag. Margaret stood there, observing her intently, arms crossed and a steadfast expression on her face. As soon as Ian finished, Margaret gestured towards the door. Leave, she shouted. Ian ventured into the frigid night, her legs struggling to support her weight. She cast a fleeting look over her shoulder, yearning for a hint of compassion. Yet Margaret's stare was unyielding. Cold as granite, she pivoted and strode out of the compound, stepping into the desolate streets of Lagos, the cold nipping at her delicate attire. With each step, her heart grew heavier, the tears on her cheeks blending with the cool night air. Where might she venture? What actions would she take? Her universe had shattered, leaving her with naught but an expanse of darkness before her. As she strolled, a sudden, jarring screech shattered the stillness of the deserted streets. Ian snapped her head around at the sound. But before she could respond, darkness enveloped her. Ian lay still on the frigid earth, her delicate form unmoving. Doctor, will she be okay? A woman's frantic voice reverberated through the hospital corridor. Her expression was etched with concern as she leaned in, yearning for clarity. She remains unconscious, the doctor said with a grave expression. We are putting forth our utmost effort and hoping for her complete healing. If you wish, you can see her now. Ume rushed into the hospital room, her heart racing as she beheld Ian's motionless form resting on the bed. Tears welled in her eyes as she neared the girl, who appeared so tiny and vulnerable beneath the stark white sheets. That morning, Ume was on her way to the gym when she spotted Ian sprawled out in the middle of the road. Fear enveloped her, yet upon confirming the girl was still alive, she swiftly hurried her to the hospital. Poor child, Ume murmured softly, her tears falling as she gently brushed a strand of hair from Ian's face. Ian possessed a softness that resonated deeply with Ume's heart. She found herself lost in thought, pondering what could have compelled a girl so young to roam the streets at such a late hour. Upon discovering Ian, she observed a small bag next to her containing a few articles of clothing. Is it possible that Ian has fled from home? Ume was enveloped by a wave of melancholy. Meanwhile, in the village, Chuma felt a persistent unease gripping her heart. For days, she had been plagued by haunting dreams of her daughter. She writhed in her sleep, awakening soaked in perspiration, fervently hoping for Ian's well-being. Each effort to reach out to her former friend in Kiryu had been in vain. And Chuma's restlessness deepened with every day that went by. Her sole solace lay in prayer, and she grasped it fiercely, imploring the deities to safeguard her daughter. After 5 arduous days, Ian finally opened her eyes. Ume stood beside her, and as she witnessed Ian's decision to stay, tears of joy streamed down her cheeks. She grasped Ian's hand firmly, her fingers entwined around it. You are awake, Ume whispered, her voice trembling with relief. Fear gripped me completely. I believed she might never open her eyes again. Ian blinked, her thoughts clouded and her body feeling frail. She surveyed her surroundings, a sense of bewilderment washing over her. What led me to this point? She whispered, her voice almost lost in the air. There's no need to worry, Ume said softly, as she brushed Ian's hand. You are now secure. All will be well. Following a few additional days of recuperation, Ian was released from the hospital and returned home with Ume. Ume was an extraordinary woman. She possessed great wealth, being the widow of a former minister, and held a position of high regard within the city. Despite possessing all the riches one could desire, her existence was cloaked in sorrow. She and her late husband were childless, a sorrow that lingered deeply within her heart. She had cherished her husband profoundly, and following his passing, she declined to take another partner. Instead, she channeled her energy into overseeing their business and engaging in charitable work. Her compassionate nature had garnered her affection and respect from all who were acquainted with her. One evening, as Ian sat with Ume, she recounted her tale. She recounted her father's rejection, her mother's hardships, and the sense of betrayal that ultimately drove her to the streets. Ian's voice quivered as she recounted the anguish, and Ume absorbed every syllable, her heart shattering with each revelation. How could a father turn his back on his own child? Ume questioned, her voice heavy with disbelief. As she grasped Ian's hand, tears flowed freely down her cheeks. Fear not, my beloved, your home awaits, and we will ensure that all your mother's aspirations for you and your siblings are realized. Maybe this is the way it was meant to unfold. You are secure now. Ian gazed at Ume, her heart brimming with appreciation and optimism. After a lengthy period, she sensed that her life could finally be on the brink of a positive transformation. Chuma stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when the sound of a car pulling into the compound broke the silence. She paused, taken aback. In the village, automobiles were a rarity, particularly one as eye-catching as this. Whispers of intrigue floated through the air as neighbors and villagers cautiously emerged to witness the unfolding scene. Chuma wiped her hands on her wrapper and stepped outside, her heart pounding with anticipation. Nuka sat before his hut, arms crossed, gazing at the car with an expression that revealed nothing. Suddenly, the car door swung open, and Ian emerged, closely followed by Ume. For a brief instant, Chuma found himself frozen in place. Her eyes grew large with astonishment as she absorbed the image of the young girl standing in front of her. Could this be her daughter? Her Ian? Without a moment's hesitation, Chuma dashed towards Ian, her voice quivering as she called out, "Ian, is that really you?" Before Ian could reply, Chuma enveloped her in a firm embrace, tears streaming down her face. "You look so beautiful," she cried, embracing her daughter tightly as if she could never bear to part with her. In their embrace, they held onto one another, a silent testament to their love and relief that resonated beyond mere words. Ian's sister stood nearby, their faces glowing with joy. Ume stood by, her eyes glistening with tears, as she witnessed the heartfelt reunion unfold before her. The connection shared between mother and daughter was unmistakable, stirring profound emotions within her. Once the embraces and salutations were exchanged, they gathered beneath the expansive tree in the yard. Ume shared the story of discovering Ian on the bustling streets of Lagos and welcoming her into her home. As Chuma listened, a wave of disappointment washed over her heart. Upon learning of Nkiri's treachery, her friend had vowed to assist her, yet ultimately led Ian into a world of anguish. "I will help you get justice," Ume assured Chuma, her voice steady and determined. Then, with all her focus on Chuma, Ume smiled at Ume. She expressed her pride in you. "You are a resilient and brave individual, deserving of a fulfilling life, just as your children are. I reside in a spacious home in the city. Enjoying my solitude, I'm here to assist you. I will make certain that your daughters experience the life you envisioned for them. I hope there are more mothers who share your qualities. Your accomplishments with limited resources are truly impressive, and I hold you in high regard." Tears streamed down Chuma's face as she collapsed to the ground, wailing, not in sorrow but in pure joy. "Thanks a lot. May the deities bestow their blessings upon you," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. Never did I imagine a day such as this would arrive. I believed that all was hopeless. Yet it seems divine intervention has brought you to us." Word traveled fast throughout the village. Whispers filled the air about the angel who had arrived to save Chuma and her children. Neighbors congregated in clusters, admiring Yum's generosity and the unexpected change in circumstances for Chuma's family. The following morning, Hiroka stood by his hut, observing quietly as Chuma and her daughters got ready to depart for the city. His heart weighed down by remorse. He had thought that nothing positive could ever emerge from Chuma or her girls. However, upon witnessing Ume, a successful woman, and the admiration she had for Chuma, he started to reconsider everything. He reflected on his own sons, and a sense of bitterness began to settle in his chest. His sons, on whom he had placed all his expectations, had delivered nothing but anguish and letdowns. They lacked drive, showed little ambition, and consistently underachieved academically. Regardless of the amount he invested in their education, they perpetually found themselves at the bottom of their classes. The memory that lingered in his mind was when his eldest son declared his desire to become a Pamwaintapa. A Waintapa, Danny Mata thought to himself. He had imagined a different path for his sons. He desired their success, yet he had demonstrated neither interest nor effort. As the car drove away with Chuma and her daughters, Hiroka experienced a deep regret that pierced through him, causing a profound ache in his chest. He had cast aside Chuma and her children, convinced they held no value. As he observed their lives unfold, striving for a brighter future, he found himself pondering the possibilities of what might have transpired had he opted to embrace and uplift them instead. For the first time, Danny perceived the reality. Chuma's daughters were a source of strength. They were a gift he had overlooked. Life unfolded in a wonderfully unexpected way for Chuma and her children. Ume embraced them with warmth and affection, inviting them into her home as if they were her own kin. They were free from the anxiety of where their next meal would come from or if they could attend school. Ume launched a venture for Chuma in the city, equipping her with the necessary resources to succeed. While her daughters attended one of the top schools in Lagos, Een dedicated herself fully to her studies, and when the time came for her WIAC exams, she excelled remarkably. Ume, seeing Een's potential and resolve, encouraged her to pursue her dreams by sending her overseas to study law. Een found herself facing an opportunity she had never envisioned, and she welcomed it with open arms. As the years went by, Een came back home, now a fully grown woman, and her mother beamed with pride. Chuma felt a surge of happiness as she witnessed her daughter's remarkable progress. Her siblings were also thriving in their respective fields, all thanks to Yum's steadfast encouragement. Een's aspirations transformed into reality when she secured a role at one of the largest firms in the nation. Her first day brimmed with anticipation and jitters, as she realized she had finally arrived at her destined place. One afternoon, in the midst of a board meeting, Een sat at the table, absorbing every word as the conversation unfolded. Out of nowhere, a door swung open and an individual stepped inside. Her heart raced with sudden intensity. She glanced upward and became motionless. It was Alex. He appeared just as dashing as she recalled. At this moment, he appeared to have grown, his presence dominating the space around him. Their eyes connected over the table, creating a moment that felt as if time had paused entirely. After that, neither of them could concentrate on the meeting. They were overwhelmed by the surprise and happiness of reuniting. Immediately after the meeting concluded, Een hurried over to him. "Alex," she called, her voice brimming with feeling. "Een," Alex exclaimed, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "Is it truly you?" "It's me, Alex," she exclaimed, and they embraced each other in a warm, tight hug. For an instant, it seemed as though everything else had faded away. Alex had never imagined he would cross paths with Een once more. He recalled the moment he awoke that morning, only to discover her absence. When he faced his mother, she had icily informed him it was for the best. The recollection of that day continued to haunt him. Since that time, his bond with his mother had changed irrevocably. He was unable to absolve her for the harm she had inflicted on the innocent girl. Later, they found themselves in a serene restaurant. sharing stories and reconnecting on all that had transpired. Ian recounted to Alex the night his mother had expelled her, a pivotal moment that led to Omi discovering her and transforming her existence. As she spoke, Alex felt a tumult of guilt and anger. Yet there was also a warmth of happiness swelling within. Ian's tale concluded on a joyful note. And that was the essence of it all. With genuine remorse in his voice, Alex expressed, "I deeply apologize for my mother's actions. I'm different from her, Ian, and I hope you can understand why I couldn't intervene back then." Ian smiled, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Alex, you were always different from her. Your kindness shone through when others turned away. That's an experience etched in my memory forever." Alex returned her gaze with a warm smile, expressing his regret as he said, "I'm truly sorry for what I did to you. I deeply regret my actions towards you. Ian, I must express how stunning you appear. Your accomplishments fill me with pride and admiration." Ian felt a rush of warmth, her cheeks flushing with a soft glow. For an extended moment, they gazed at one another, their bond rekindling like a flickering flame. Thus, their love story commenced, emerging from pain and struggle, yet flourishing into something beautiful and brimming with hope. Alex had a remarkable ability to fill a space with his inviting presence. He was gentle and thoughtful, possessing a unique ability to make an elf laugh so hard that her sides hurt. He understood precisely how to light up her expression, be it the amusing notes he tucked into her bag at work or the unexpected gifts he sent her way on weekends. He cherished the moments that made her feel unique. Their weekends together felt surreal, as if plucked from the pages of a fantasy. At times, they would visit the beach, resting by the shore with their feet nestled in the warm sand. They would immerse themselves in books, engage in spirited discussions about tales, and share laughter until the sun sank into the ocean, reminiscent of the joyful days spent in the garden years prior. At other times, Alex would lead her on mountain climbing adventures, and the exhilaration of it brought back memories of her life in the village. The elegance, the allure of the natural world, and the liberation she once experienced. Their bond endured, unwavering even in moments of separation. They would spend hours on the phone, discussing everything under the stars, their aspirations, their struggles, their whimsical little instances until the initial light of dawn crept into the sky. In each other, they found solace, and the joy they shared was unmistakable. One evening, Alex extended an invitation to Annie for a special dinner. Unbeknownst to her, a carefully orchestrated moment awaited, one that Alex had meticulously crafted over the course of several months. He was prepared to embark on the next chapter. As he sat at a candle-lit table, Alex reached for her hand, his voice unwavering yet brimming with feeling. "And thus," he commenced, "I don't have a lot to express. As you're already aware of my feelings, you bring me immense joy. From the moment our paths crossed, it began with a sense of compassion. Yet before long, every thought of you blossomed into something deeper, love. For months, tears flowed as I feared I had lost you. But then, like a precious gift, you returned to my life. And I vow never to let you slip away again. My feelings for you, Annie, are immense, and I wish to share eternity by your side." Annie's eyes brimmed with tears as she looked at him. Her heart surged with a blend of joy and trepidation. "What if your mother says no?" she whispered, her voice quivering. Alex beamed, his hold on her hand growing firmer. "She would never have the audacity. She has figured out how to keep her distance from me. Annie, I have changed from the person I once was. Moreover, you are no longer that unfortunate servant she took advantage of. You are all I have ever desired. And nothing can alter that truth." Annie smiled despite her tears, her heart racing. "Then, indeed," she whispered, her voice brimming with delight. "Indeed, Alex, I will marry you." Months later, they stood before their families, united and resolute, as they exchanged their vows. Their love conquered every obstacle, and their bond radiated happiness to all who surrounded them. Even Madame Margaret, who had once gone to great lengths to undermine Annie, was there, though she found herself unable to meet Annie's gaze. Margaret felt an overwhelming sense of guilt, a burdensome presence that clung to her relentlessly. Each encounter with Annie brought back memories of the harshness she had once displayed towards her. Yet Annie, with her compassionate nature, always behaved as if their past was untroubled. She regarded Margaret with a sense of dignity and elegance, extending a generosity that Margaret felt was beyond her worth. Margaret pondered that Annie was meant to be with Alex. Her heart weighed down by remorse. Not even my malevolence could alter that. In the village, Lucas found himself engulfed in a profound sense of solitude and remorse. The sons he had once cherished, dismissing his wife and daughters for their sake, ultimately became his deepest letdown. Their presence transformed into a haunting terror for the villagers. Indolent, impulsive, and heartless, one of them met a tragic end in a confrontation, while the other seemingly slipped away, leaving no evidence of their presence. It was impossible to determine whether he was breathing or not. Audora, his wife, could no longer endure the sorrow of their shattered home and chose to leave him. His mother, who had once sensed his disdain for daughters, had long since departed from this world. Now, Lucas found himself utterly alone, surrounded by the desolation of his empty compound. The man who had once taken great pride in his sons now sat in silence, tormented by the decisions he had made. One day, Lucas found himself in a dire state of illness, utterly alone, without the comfort of family or friends to tend to him. He sprawled on the frigid floor of his hut, frail and vulnerable. Regret consumed his thoughts as he recalled Kioma and her daughters, the ones he had left behind. He came to understand, albeit belatedly, that each child is a precious gift, and none holds more value than another. However, the lesson arrived after the moment had passed. Lucas drew his last breath in his humble hut, isolated and overlooked, a despondent figure, burdened by the weight of regret for the life he let slip away. Time stretched on, transforming days into weeks, and then into months. His absence went unnoticed by anyone in the village. His formerly vibrant compound fell into disarray, now choked by rampant weeds. The hut's walls gave way, transforming the area into a wild, desolate forest. Creatures wandered through spaces once filled with human presence. And within the castle, he transformed into a mere echo of history, hastened only by the breeze. In the meantime, Kioma and her daughters flourished. Life brimmed with affection, happiness, and meaning, and they, now blissfully united, embraced the life she had once envisioned. A tribute to strength and optimism. Hello friends, thank you for tuning in to this incredible tale. I truly hope you found it as delightful as we did while creating it. This narrative is rich with insights, and I trust you have gleaned a lesson or two from it. Please feel free to share your thoughts and insights with us, as we would greatly appreciate the opportunity to learn from your experiences. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please take a moment to do so before moving on. Your support in liking and sharing this video will help it reach a wider audience. I am truly grateful for all your love and support. It means a lot to me. For now, I must take my leave and look forward to our next tale together. Farewell.